Hi, welcome back to a brand new video. Recently I was working on a Power App canvas and I was trying to recreate the so-called version history which SharePoint lists already have as standard if you activate it. And there are of course two ways how to do it. Either you use a Power Automate workflow to bring you the version history of that specific item, maybe in form of a JSON file or JSON format, and then you can work with that in the Power App. That will be the more, let's say, professional way. But also the more difficult way, which is a bit more work to do with creating the workflow and bring the data back to the app and so on and so forth. If you're not going to have that much data, I came up with another way. And what I did is I created a separate list on SharePoint, and I called that as my history list or version history list, something like that. And what I did is that instead of updating items, I always saved or created a new item. So for example, let's say we have a gallery on our main list, and then when we want to say the changes of that item, we update the changes on the main list, but we always create a new item in the history list. So that way we can always go back and see the changes that have happened. And then I went and created a new screen where I was showcasing the version history. That was the easy part. So the tricky part was to showcase, similar like on SharePoint, where the changes have happened. So if you have like 10, 20 columns, you don't want to always go through them and check which changes have happened. But maybe it will be helpful to highlight the changes. So what we need to do is to find a way how to compare data inside of a collection. And yeah, that's what I managed doing with help of my dear colleague Martin Lehmann, which I'm going to tag in the video on LinkedIn so that you can get to know him as well. I hope you liked the video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up if you like the video, as I said, and have fun watching. Thanks. Yeah, so here we are in Power Apps Canvas. I've already started a demo application, and I'm going to take a look here on my SharePoint list. I will use this SharePoint list here that I've already have. I'm going to copy this URL and I'm going to add it as a new data. So I'm going to search here for SharePoint. If I write it correctly, there it is. I'm going to connect to my account. And I can also find it from here. I don't have that many sites. And I think that was my schools, right? Yeah, schools. So I'm going to connect to that data source. And there it is. So what I want to do next is I want to add like an edit form. And this will be here. I also need another screen. Let's use a blank screen, which will be our home screen. Let's call it home. And this will be our edit. I'm not going to make the app beautiful, so let's stick to the functionality. So in the home screen, I also want to do on the start, clear collect. This will be my call schools. And the items will be coming from my schools list. So I want to have only a limited amount of columns. So for that, I'm going to use the show columns function from my schools list. And I'm going to use ID, school name, city. Let's grab here ID. School, I think school name was title. Let's filter and take a look. Yeah, let's just link title. So that will be my title. Next, I want to have city, number of students, city, number of students. Let's grab the subject and the teachers. I'm going to leave the pictures out. So we have subjects and teachers. Okay, close that, and then we should have here our clear collect, and this is on start. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this ellipsis and I'll say run on start. So this collection should be now filled with data, no? So these are my schools here. If I remove the filtering, these are the ones that we have here, and also cleaned up so I don't have all that all those columns that SharePoint has as standard, since I don't need them. And if I need any new column, I can just go here and add the new column. Okay, so now that we have the data, let's put gallery. So I'm going to use a blank vertical gallery, and I'm going to connect it to my collection. So what I need to see here is maybe a couple of labels. So also another trick which I often use is, instead of having a label for the title of the column and then the value, you can concatenate them together, if that makes sense for your case. So what you can say is, for example, this is the city. We can see it because it says here this item city. We can say here in quotes city colon, then blue space, and then we can use the and icon or and character to concatenate the static part, which is the string, with the dynamic value. Okay, so we had city. Let's bring here a couple more. Paste. And let's arrange them a little bit better here. So that's of course not always city. So this is city. Let's have here ID. Again, that's not going to look beautiful, but we need some information here to be sure which one we have selected. School name, number of students, school, no, that was title. That was title. That was our school name, but we can use spaces here. Oops. And let's make this a bit bigger. This was then our number of students. And what else? What are subjects? Teachers. Okay, so subjects, it will not be easy to have it in a label, but we can try. So we can say for subjects, we have this item dot subjects. This is going to complain now because it's a table. So what we can do is we can use the concat function. It says there, joins all text values produced by evaluating the given expression of the given table into one text value. So we can use that. I hate it when it removes my this item. These are the subjects. So the expression will be the value, and then we want to separate it by a semicolon. So we can see here that we have our values from the table separated by a semicolon. If we want like a little bit of distance there, we can add a space after the semicolon, and that's how we can do it. Or maybe with a dash. I think semicolon is better. Okay, so the same thing I'm going to do for the teachers. And this is teachers. This item dot teachers, but this is not going to be a value, but let's say display. No, I think display. That's a table. Let me remove this because it helps. Teachers, so I want to display. Exactly, that's what I was looking for. So semicolon, space, and close the parenthesis. And here we have our 3 teachers that we can see here as well. You can use emails or whatever you want, no? So it doesn't matter, except of images. So the display, the image of the person will not show up here. It needs to be a string, so it needs to be a text. Okay, so we have here our gallery, which looks terrible, but it doesn't matter at the moment. Let's separate this a little bit with maybe, let's do like a rectangle here, something like that, just for us to make it a bit easier to distinguish the values. Okay, so let's bring ID at the top. It doesn't make sense over there. And what we also need is also a button, but let's take an arrow for that. Next arrow, something like that. And this now needs to be, of course, in the gallery. That was my mistake, so it needs to be there. And what I want to do is, on select, of course, of this icon, I want to create a new variable, which will be called set var item, and the value will be this item. So I'm grabbing the whole record. And also I want it to navigate me to the edit screen with, I don't know, screen transition cover. Okay, so now when I click my next icon or my arrow here, I will be landing on the edit screen. And if we take a look on the left hand side, we have here our variables. Got it? And this should be a global variable. And as you can see here, we have our var item, which has a record with these values, the ID number, the title, and so on and so forth. So the values that we passed from the gallery. So what we need in the edit screen is, of course, an edit form. Come on, let's bring that there. And in this edit form, I want to connect it with our data source, which is schools. And I'm going to grab, in a second, the fields that I need. For example, attachments, I don't need them. And the school picture, I don't need that as well. And I'm going to do this, the columns, it can be 1, vertical, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit shorter because I want to add here a button, which will be my save button. Okay, so what I want to do here, before continuing with the save button, let me see. So we have the schools here as a data source, but the item is missing, which needs to be the var item. And that way we can see here our information. If I click play, it's there. If I want to create a new one, let's take a look. What is our default mode is form mode.edit. So that means if I am on the home screen and I want to create a new item, let's add a button here. Let's call this new. And if I want to create a new button, a new item, I want to set the var item to blank, because I want to empty that, and then navigate, not with a colon, with a semicolon, navigate to my edit screen. So what happens when I click new is that I come to my edit screen. As you can see, no item to display because our var item is empty. So the form is in edit mode, which means that it didn't find anything. So there's no item there to edit. That's why it's showing blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the var item is empty, then go in form mode.view, otherwise go in form mode.edit. There may be much better ways to do this. This is how I do it and it works. But feel free to comment how you do it if you have a better solution. So I'm going to say here if var item is blank, well, that is gone. Var item is blank. I forget to zoom in a little bit. Let me do this. Maybe it's a bit easier for you to view the code. So if the var item is blank, then I want to go in form mode .new, otherwise in form mode.edit. So let's go back. I need a back button. So if I click this one, I have here the values. Let me create here another button. So back, save. Okay, so my back button does not do anything at the moment, but it should navigate me to home screen. So when I want to go back here, click new, then now I see the fields. It's in new mode, and yeah, the error is gone. Okay, so if I start typing here, so the title, let me rename that real quick to unlock it first. It's not a Panda display name in this case. This will be the school name, because I use the title column on SharePoint. So the school name, let's see what we have here. School 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Let's call it school 5. City Stuttgart. And number of students doesn't matter. Subjects, have these subjects here. Teachers, let's grab a couple of my demo people. And now we are going to create the onSelect property of the our save button. So what I want to do is I want to say if the item is empty, I want to create a new item. Otherwise, I want to update the item. So if the item is empty, I want to do, let's make it a bit bigger. I want to create the patch function in the schools source, which will be the form3.updates. What I'm missing is also here the defaults from schools. So this will create a new item. What I want also is that I want to have as my new var item the item that was recently created. So to do so, I can do here a set var item and say this will be my new var item. Okay, otherwise, so the else value will be a patch function as well into schools, where now we need the ID. So the ID is our var item, because the var item is not blank in the else value. And I'm going to say again form3.updates. So this should be sufficient for our two scenarios. So either we have an item and we're editing or updating, or we don't have an item and we are creating a new one, but we want that item to come back to us as a record, so that we know what we created and we have it in our var item variable. And next I want to do a clear collect of call schools. Maybe let me grab it from here, so it should be the same with also my show columns logic. And on save, I want to do that as well. Okay, so let's test it out. If I click now save, we should have here a new school called school 5 with the information. On school pick we didn't use that field. And also in my var item, I have now the school number 5, Stuttgart, the information that I just entered. So this is how you can also save the information that you just created in the variable. Okay, so now we're creating and editing in the main list. The topic of this video was to create like some kind of a version history. So if we take a look at this item that we just created, the version history will be not empty, but will just show the information that we entered. So let's test the editing. So if I go now back and say, okay, I have here my new school with ID number 7, I click on that, and I will say, let's add here another subject, geography. And also let's add another teacher. And if I say save, this should now update this item. And we have here geography as well, and that 4th teacher. And if we right click it and then check the version history, we have here a second version with the changes that I did. So I did changes in these 2 columns where in the subject and the teachers. It doesn't say what it got changed. It's just showing where the change happened. So for example, it's not showing the which one was the new one, Ellen. So Ellen was not here. Now Ellen is here. Geography was not here. Now geography is here. So it's not just showing Ellen and geography, it's showing the field, and you need to check by yourself what changed. So how would we replicate this in Power Apps? As I said, there are 2 ways. We can do a Power Automate flow, maybe in a second video, and see how we can get this information from SharePoint over Power Automate to Power Apps. But that's a difficult way, and it requires a bit more work and experience, and I'm happy to do it in another video, but this time we're going to stick on something more simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new list. I'm going to go to Site Contents. And I'm going to create a new list. Let's cancel that and say new list from existing. So I'm in my site, and I'm going to create a list from my schools list. I'll click next, and I'm going to call it schools history. Or yeah, let's say history is version history. So let's show it in, we don't have to show it there, but let's do it because I might go and take a look once in a while. So we have now the same list. So what I want to do is when I click save, and if the item is blank or not, it doesn't matter. I always want to create a new item in my school's history list. First, let's grab that information. So let's search here for SharePoint. If I could write it right. SharePoint, my account, project management site, and then we have here school's history. Connect to that. I also want to create a new collection on start because I need that data in my application as well. So this is going to be exactly the same because the columns are also the same. But it's going to be called schools history, and it's going to come from schools history. It looks like it's not complaining because this should be the same. Yeah. So on run of this application, or on start, I should have now my collection schools as it was, and the collection schools history, which is empty. We'll see in a second if that works. So as I said, on the save property, or on save of that button, we're doing the update or create in the main list, and we also collect the data back. And what I want to do here next is I want to do a patch, this one. So I'm going to do a patch of the information. Did I zoom out? I think so. So I'm going to do a patch of that information, but not into schools, but into schools history. Schools history. And I'm going to patch that information every time I save. So let's format the text. And next I also want to have my clear collect happening right after it. Okay, so let's test this out. We have our school number 5. Let's open the schools list also. So this is our newest entry. And when I add here something else, let's add math and another teacher. Running out of teachers here. And let's say save. So in my schools list, this is going to update the item. So as you can see here, we have now math and that 5th teacher. But hopefully in my school's history, I now have a new entry as well, no, with this information. Let's do another change and let's say more students, even more subjects. Let's add bio there, biology, and can I search here for another name, maybe with G? Yeah, I have another teacher. And if I save this in the schools list, this will add another teacher, another subject, and in the history list, this will add a new item. So this is my version history. Again, don't do this if you are expecting tremendous amount of data, because this will, it will not be problem on SharePoint, but pulling all that data in Power Apps, then you will have to work around the performance issues. Then you will have to do a lot of filtering and then delegation issues and so on and so forth. So do it if you don't have that much data. In my scenario, where I tested, I didn't have that much data. So, and I'm not expecting that much data, so that's why we are working this way. Okay, so as you can see, we have now our history, and the difference is that in my main list, when I click version history, as I said, I only see the columns that changed. But here we are changing everything, so we are writing everything, because I didn't want to go the hassle to see which columns changed and update only those. Maybe also something you can do. Maybe you can test out and let me know. So I'm just doing it the easy way and writing everything. Okay, so now we can take a look into our collection schools history, and then we have these items here. So what we are also saving here is the ID. Wait a second, this is the ID of the SharePoint itself. What I forgot is that on save into our schools history, we need the ID from our main list. So in our schools history, we need here a new column. I'm going to do a plain text column, and this will be the school ID. School ID. Let's make this a little bit bigger as well. Why is it so small? And so I'm going to create a new text column called school ID, and this should also save the ID of the school, because in the app, when I want to check the version history of my item, I need to find some item somehow. So this ID will not help me. So I need to find my the version history of my item based on the school ID. So since I already have here a couple of items, I'm going to manually edit it. So the ID is from this school 5 is number 7. So I'm going to manually write it here and exit grid view. So now we have the school ID. So in the app, when we do a clear collect for the on start, we do a clear collect from the history. We need here also need to refresh the school's history first, and then run on start. So we need here also our school ID. And when I click run on start, we have here our school ID number 7. Also on the save button, we have here this click collect again. I'm going to paste it there. So the issue that we are facing now is that when I click save and I create the version history in my school's history list, I have here the school ID, but I'm not saving it because I'm just doing a patch with the form updates. So what I will have to do is I must either, instead of using form 3.updates, do a patch with each of the columns, so each of the fields, or I will have to save the ID of this newly created entry in the history list, and then do a patch again, an update patch then, with the school ID, because I have the school ID from the var item. So what we can do here is we can say set var item history, let's call it that way, and this will be our new var item history. And let's test this out. Let's say here something else, blah, and save it. So we should have here our new item. No, there it is, Stuttgart. And on the save button, our var item history contains the item that was just saved. So what we need from here is the ID. And what we are going to do is we're going to do another patch function where we say patch in school history my var item history. That will be the item that we are patching. And then I want to use the column school ID, and the value which is going to be saved there is from my var item that ID. Semicolon, format text. So again, after saving a new entry in the var item history, in the school's history list, I'm saving that item back to a variable var item history. Why? Because I want to use it in my next patch action, where I'm updating the school ID column with the ID of the school, which comes from my var item. Okay, so let's test it out. We saw that this one did not have the school ID because we are not saving it. So I'm going to put it again manually and exit review. So now, if I go and do a change, let's put here another couple of, I think I have limited that. I don't know, blah, blah, let's send. It doesn't matter actually, it's just about, just for seeing the change. So when I click save, I see in my schools that my item has been updated to blah, blah. And in my school's history, I have the fourth element created, and now we have the school ID also saved. Now, so it didn't create anything else, it just updated that one based on the ID. Yeah, so this is how we can now create the version history. And now we are going to see how we can pull this information into the app so that we can display the version history, and also the tricky part, displaying the changes. Now, what changed from the latest two versions, for example. We have version 4 and 3, and we can see that the version 3 had Stuttgart blah, and version 4 has Stuttgart blah blah. So this change needs to be somehow highlighted because, okay, in our case we have 4 columns, but if you have more columns, it's much more difficult to distinguish the change. So what we're going to do next is we have our, let me check here, do we have our school ID here? Yes, we have it. So our collection should have all the information we need. Yeah.